They don't pay $30 an hour for nothing. That's what I kept telling myself as I turned off the highway and into the gravel lot of Coyote Fuel and Go, a lonely gas station crouched in the middle of the Navajo desert. The neon coyote on the sign flickered like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive or give up. Out here, miles from the nearest town, even the darkness had weight. It pressed against the windows thick and suffocating, like the desert itself was breathing. My car engine ticked as it cooled each sound swallowed by the vast emptiness around me. In the distance, the red rock mesas rose like sleeping beasts, their outlines barely visible against a sky so black it looked bottomless. Somewhere out there, coyotes were howling, the kind of sound that makes your instincts sit up and listen. I stared at the sign again. $30 an hour. For a man like me, that was salvation. My name's Miguel Reyes, though everyone calls me Miggs. I'd worked every kind of job that didn't ask too many questions. Mechanics, security night. Janitor? This one seemed easy. One building 7 hours, no customers after midnight. Just sit in the booth, watch the cameras, keep an eye on the pumps. How hard could it be? My phone buzzed. It was Danny, my younger brother, fresh out of rehab, trying to stay clean this time. His voice cracked through the static. "Hey, little brother, you at work yet?" "Just got here," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "Don't have to do this, Miggs. You've already done enough for me." "Relax. It's just a job. Easy money." He hesitated, then said softly, "Be careful, okay? The desert's got long memories." That last line stuck with me. The desert's got long memories. Grandma used to say that too, how the land remembers every drop of blood spilled on it. I laughed it off, told him good night, and stepped out of the car. The heat still radiated from the asphalt, even though the clock read 10:48 p.m. Arizona never really cooled down. It just pretended. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The air smelled like dust, stale coffee, and old gas. A boombox played low classic rock from somewhere behind the counter, the kind of white noise that fills empty places. That's when I met Hank Yazy, owner-manager, maybe janitor too. A Navajo man in his 60s with weathered skin and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. "You must be Miguel," he said. "Miggs," I corrected, shaking his hand. His grip was dry, firm, deliberate. "Night shift's not for everyone," he said, voice low. "Last 3 guys didn't last a week." He gave me the tour, the bulletproof booth, the cameras, the register. It was old equipment, but functional. Then his tone shifted. Serious, heavy. "There are rules here, Miggs. Important ones." He listed them slowly, like reciting scripture. Rule 1, don't sell jerky tobacco or Slim Jims to anyone with yellow eyes. Rule 2, if the pumps start leaking black fluid, not gas, something darker, lock the doors and play track 3 on that boombox. Rule 3, never answer the payphone near the bathrooms. He didn't smile, didn't explain, just handed me the keys and said, "Follow the rules, and you'll be fine." When he drove away, the silence that settled over the station felt wrong. Too still, too expectant. I took my seat in the booth, flipping through the camera feeds, trying to ignore how every flickering light looked like movement, how every reflection looked like eyes watching back. At exactly 11:00 p.m., the desert sighed a gust of wind carrying sand against the glass. I stared out at the pumps glinting under the flickering lights and whispered the only thing that came to mind. They don't pay $30 an hour for nothing. The night stretched thin over the desert, a quiet so deep it made my ears ring. From inside the glass booth, I could see the 4 gas pumps lined in perfect symmetry under buzzing fluorescent lights. The hum from the bulbs was steady, hypnotic, like a lullaby for the dead. Every few seconds, one light would flicker just enough to make me look up. The booth was barely big enough for the stool register and an old desk fan that wheezed with each turn. The walls were scratched with initials and messages from guards before me. "Don't look outside after 3 a.m. They know your name." Jokes, I told myself. Bored night shift nonsense. I tried to focus on the monitors. 8 security feeds, all grainy and gray. Rows of empty asphalt shelves stacked with snacks. The payphone in the corner collecting dust. Everything looked normal, ordinary. Yet there was something in the air that didn't belong. A heaviness like the station was holding its breath. Around midnight, I had my first customer. A woman pulled up in an old pickup, headlights cutting across the empty lot. She bought cigarettes and left without a word. 15 minutes later, a college kid stopped for gas. He smiled, thanked me, drove off toward Flagstaff. Normal, routine. I started to relax, thinking maybe Hank's rules were just old superstition. At 1:30 a.m., the bell above the door jingled again. I looked up from my phone, expecting another traveler. Instead, the man who entered looked like he'd stepped out of a different century. A trucker, thick arms covered in faded tattoos, hair matted from the road. His boots hit the tile in heavy, deliberate steps. "Evening," I called from the booth. He didn't answer, just grunted, heading for the back cooler. I watched his reflection in the glass as he bent down to grab a drink. For a second, I froze. His shadow stretched up the wall behind him, too tall, too wide. Something about it looked wrong. There were shapes in it, 2 sharp points jutting from the head. Antlers. I blinked, and it was gone. Just a man, just a shadow. My imagination. He came to the counter, placed a Red Bull and a lighter into the drawer between us. "Pump 4, he said. I nodded, rang him up. His smell hit me then, wet fur and burnt metal, like something that had been alive too long. He pocketed the change, gave me a stare that lasted a second too long, and walked out without another word. Through the window, I watched him fuel his semi, his movements slow and mechanical. When he was done, he just stood there, looking at the booth. No, not at the booth, at me. Then he climbed into his truck and drove away, the taillights disappearing into the desert. The clock on the register blinked 200 a.m. I remembered what Hank had said. Between 2 and 4 things can get strange. I chuckled nervously, trying to shake it off. The boombox crackled behind me, the cassette shifting tracks on its own. Blue Oyster Cult's "Don't Fear the Reaper" began playing low and distant, the lyrics distorted by static. I turned it off. The silence that followed was worse. At 2:17, I decided to stretch my legs. I stepped out of the booth, the automatic lock clicking behind me. The air outside felt wrong, thicker, almost humid. I could taste metal on my tongue. The aisles were empty, rows of snacks and drinks staring back under the flickering lights. I moved past the jerky display, the smell of salt and smoke filling the air. That's when the bell above the door chimed again. Someone had entered. A woman stood near the doorway, her white sundress glowing pale under the fluorescent light. Her hair was long, tangled, hiding most of her face. She walked slowly to the jerky rack, her back to me. The fabric of her dress was stained dark spots, trailing down the back like oil or blood. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, my voice unsteady. She didn't answer, just picked up a bag of beef jerky and turned around. For a moment, I thought maybe she was just another traveler until I saw her eyes. They were wrong. The whites had vanished. Her irises were huge, glowing yellow, like candlelight through dirty glass. Hank's first rule crashed into my head. Don't sell to anyone with yellow eyes. I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We're out of jerky." Her lips curled back, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too many. "Don't lie to me, boy. Store policy," I stammered. "Can't sell that to you." She leaned close to the glass, fogging it with her breath. The smile didn't reach her eyes. "You'll starve them." Then, as suddenly as she appeared, she turned and walked out. The bell jingled bright and cheerful, like a cruel joke. I sat back down in the booth, hands trembling. Outside, the lot was empty. No truck, no footprints. Just the hum of the lights and the faint smell of burnt fur lingering in the air. I checked the cameras. Nothing. The timestamp blinked 2:33. I exhaled shakily, muttering to myself, "They don't pay $30 an hour for nothing." But something in me already knew this wasn't just another night shift. Something was watching. Something that belonged to the desert. And it was hungry. The clock on the register read 2:45 a.m. The air inside the booth felt stale, like it had been trapped there for years. I couldn't shake the image of that woman's yellow eyes, glowing like a pair of dying lanterns in the dark. My pulse hadn't slowed since she left. I told myself it was nothing. Sleep deprivation. Trick lighting. Maybe someone messing around on the highway. But the words she'd said, "You'll starve them," echoed in my head, heavy as a curse. The boombox behind me clicked suddenly. No music this time, just a faint hiss, like breathing caught in static. I turned around. The cassette deck had switched itself on. The tape wheels spun silently, though no sound came out. Then, as if sensing I was watching, it stopped. That was when the payphone rang. The sound cut through the silence like a knife through flesh, sharp, wet, unnatural. It was an old blue payphone mounted near the restrooms, a relic from the 90s. Hank's voice echoed in my memory. "Never answer the payphone." But it kept ringing. Once, twice, 10 times. Each ring came slower, heavier, like something alive was trying to get my attention. I stood frozen, the sound vibrating through the walls, through my ribs. By the 15th ring, the silence between tones felt longer than it should, stretched, distorted. Against every rational thought in my head, I stepped out of the booth. My footsteps echoed on the linoleum. The phone glowed faintly under the overhead lights, its cord swaying like it was breathing. I told myself I'd pick it up, hang it back, stop the noise. That's all. But when I lifted the receiver, it was cold, too cold. The kind of cold that burns. Static filled my ear, deep and endless. Then a voice, distant and wet, like it was speaking through water. "They're using you." My stomach dropped. "Who is this?" The voice gurgled, every word bubbling with static. "The pumps aren't for gas." I wanted to hang up. Every instinct screamed at me to hang up. But I couldn't move. "Ask about his wife," the voice rasped. "Ask Hank what he did to his wife." The static surged, drowning the voice. Then suddenly, it changed, lighter, higher. A child's voice singing off-key. "Miguel Reyes stole a car. Miguel Reyes broke the law. Miguel Reyes left his brother to fall." My throat closed. No one here knew about that. No one but Danny. I slammed the receiver down, heart hammering. The sound of the impact echoed through the empty store. For a second, I thought it was over. Then the phone rang again, shrill and relentless. I backed away, bumping into a rack of chips that toppled to the floor. The ringing didn't stop until I was inside the booth door, locked, breathing hard. Then silence. A silence so deep it made the fluorescent lights hum louder. My reflection in the glass looked pale, distorted. I could see the desert behind me, black and infinite. Somewhere out there, something was moving. A flicker on the monitor caught my eye. Pump 4. At first I thought it was just a lighting glitch. Then I saw it, a dark stain spreading from the base of the pump, slow and thick. Not gasoline, too dark, too heavy. The substance rippled like something alive. It crawled along the concrete, dragging shadows with it. Hank's second rule hit me like a slap. If the pumps start leaking black fluid, lock the doors and play track 3. My hands shook as I fumbled for the controls, hitting the lock switch. The sound of the bolts slamming home was strangely comforting. Then I turned to the boombox. The cassette sat there waiting silent, as if it knew. I pressed play, then fast-forwarded to track 3. At first, nothing. Then came a low male voice, old rhythmic chanting in Navajo. The words rolled like thunder, layered with faint echoes that didn't sound human. Beneath it, a scraping noise, bone against stone, slow and steady, like something ancient waking up. Outside, the black fluid moved. It began to pulse with the rhythm of the chant, expanding, contracting, breathing. My heart raced in sync with it. I pressed my face closer to the glass. The stuff started pulling back toward the pump, defying gravity, climbing the metal like living tar. The chant grew louder. The scrape became a roar. Then, with a sound like a reverse waterfall, the fluid vanished, sucked back into the pump. The boombox fell silent. I sat there for what felt like hours, too afraid to breathe. The smell of gasoline, mixed with something else, now a coppery tang that reminded me of blood. The monitors showed the pumps again, still and harmless. Then faintly from somewhere near the payphone came a sound that made my blood run cold. Knocking. 3 soft, deliberate knocks. Not on the door. On the glass from inside the store. But I was inside the booth. Slowly, I turned toward the sound. My breath fogged the glass. There was nothing there, just the aisles, the jerky rack, and the payphone hanging silently on the wall. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. All at once they went dark. For a moment, the world vanished. Only the faint green glow of the monitors kept me from total blindness. Something moved in that glow. A shape. A silhouette standing beside the payphone. It was tall and thin, its head tilted in an unnatural angle. I blinked, and it was gone. The lights buzzed back to life one by one. Everything looked normal again. But the air, it wasn't empty anymore. It felt crowded, like the station itself was breathing with me, watching. I looked at the clock, 3:17 a.m. Still an hour and 43 minutes to go. I sat there, hands trembling, trying to convince myself I hadn't seen what I'd seen. But deep down I already knew the truth. This wasn't just a night shift. This was a haunting. And I had just broken every rule that mattered. When the clock blinked 400 a.m., something changed. It wasn't the sound, the hum of the lights still buzzed above the fan, still clicked. It was the air. The atmosphere had thickened like breathing through dust and heat. My body knew it before my mind caught up. Something was coming. Then came a sound I hadn't heard all night, the rumble of an engine. Headlights swept across the windows, painting the booth in a blinding white flash. I squinted. A pickup truck rolled into the lot. Hank's truck. He wasn't supposed to be here until sunrise. I stepped out of the booth, heart hammering. Hank. He didn't answer right away. He just sat behind the wheel for a long time, engine idling, staring straight ahead. Finally, the door opened. Hank stepped out slowly, his boots crunching on gravel. He looked different, smaller somehow, shoulders slumped, like something heavy was pressing down on him. "You're early," I said. He gave a tired smile. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd check in. There was something off about his voice, like he was speaking from a long way away. Inside the store felt colder than it had any right to. The air was stale, heavy, with the faint scent of burnt metal. Hank walked behind the counter, checking the register, pretending like everything was normal. "Quiet night?" he asked. "Not exactly," I said. "That phone rang. The one you told me not to answer." He froze. "Did you pick it up?" I hesitated. "Yeah." Hank sighed, rubbing his temples. "You weren't supposed to do that." "What's going on, Hank?" I demanded. "What's with the rules? The black stuff, the yellow eyes. What the hell is this place?" He looked up at me. Then, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me." For a long time, he said nothing. Then he walked toward the back door, motioning for me to follow. "Come on, Miggs. It's easier to show you." The hallway behind the stockroom was dim lit by a single flickering bulb. The air grew warmer with each step, thick with the metallic smell I'd noticed earlier. When we reached the end of the corridor, Hank stopped in front of a metal door I'd never seen before. I could have sworn it hadn't been there earlier that night. He turned the handle. The hinges groaned like they hadn't been used in decades. On the other side was the desert, but not the one I'd walked in from. This was different. The stars looked closer, too bright, hanging like lanterns over the red rock that surrounded us in a perfect circle. In the center stood 4 massive pillars arranged in a square, the same formation as the gas pumps outside. But these weren't made of metal. They were bone. Ancient yellowed, carved with symbols that pulsed faintly under the moonlight. The air hummed, vibrating deep in my chest. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. "This," Hank said quietly, "is the real Coyote Fuel and Go." He stepped into the circle, his shadow stretching unnaturally long. "My grandfather built the gas station over this spot. The pumps up top feed off these bones. They take what the travelers give, not just gas money, Miggs. Essence, life." My stomach twisted. "You mean?" He nodded. "Energy, spirit, call it whatever you want. Small doses, barely noticeable. Keeps them asleep. Them." A sound rose from the rocks, a low, distant howl that made every hair on my body stand on end. It wasn't animal. It was too deep, too human. "They used to walk this land," Hank said, "long before us. Skinwalkers, witches, who traded their humanity for power. When the old ways died, they were trapped here, buried under these stones. The Yazy family made a deal. We feed them enough to keep them still, to keep them from remembering what hunger feels like." He turned to face me. "But lately, the offerings haven't been enough. No one comes inside anymore. Cards at the pump. Machines. Convenience has consequences, Miggs." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a chain, its links gleaming in the moonlight. "They're starving." Before I could react, he grabbed my wrist. His grip was iron. "You, though," he said softly, almost tenderly, "you're perfect. You've got strong blood, strong spirit." I struggled, but he was stronger than he looked. He pulled me toward one of the bone pillars and wrapped the chain around my arm. The metal burned against my skin, freezing cold. "Hank, let me go." He didn't stop. "It's the 7th night," he said, tightening the chains. "Feeding time." The desert wind picked up, carrying whispers in a language I didn't recognize. The ground began to tremble. Shadows stirred between the rocks' shapes that moved wrong, too fast, too fluid. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw yellow eyes, dozens of them circling just beyond the pillars. "They'll take you quick," Hank said. Better than starving. I slammed my foot into his chest, breaking his grip, and stumbled backward. My hand brushed against something on his belt, a small clay token shaped like a coyote. I grabbed it before he could react. The shadows screamed high, shrill, hungry. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to get away from those eyes, those voices whispering my name. Behind me, Hank shouted something in Navajo, but the words were drowned by the howls rising around us. I burst through the door, back into the stockroom. The moment I crossed the threshold, the desert vanished behind me like it had never existed. The door slammed shut on its own. When I turned back, there was nothing there, just a solid wall. My hands were shaking so bad, I almost dropped the token. It felt warm in my palm, pulsing faintly alive. That's when I heard the payphone again, ringing louder than before, echoing through the store like a scream. I should have ignored it, but the sound wasn't just ringing anymore. It was calling my name. The phone's ring cut through the silence, sharp and urgent, echoing from somewhere deep inside the store. Each shrill note was soaked in static, vibrating against the glass walls like the heartbeat of something alive. I clutched the clay coyote token tighter, its edges digging into my palm. The payphone glowed faintly under the flickering lights, as if the building itself wanted me to answer. I hesitated, then lifted the receiver. Static hissed in my ear, followed by a voice the same one I'd heard before, ancient and broken, speaking through a sea of distortion. "Throw it in the flames," it whispered. "Break the binding." My throat went dry. "Who are you?" A pause. Then so faint I almost missed it. I was his wife. The line crackled, popping like firewood. "He bound me to this place," she said. "Bound us all. The bones, the pumps, the desert. Burn it, Miguel. Burn it before the hunger finds you." Then the line went dead. I stood there, frozen, staring at the phone. Outside, the lights above the pumps flickered violently, casting jerky shadows across the ground. Something moved beneath Pump 4, a black shimmer like oil rising to the surface. The smell of decay hit me thick and metallic. That was when I knew what I had to do. Burn it all. I ran to Hank's truck. The keys were still in the ignition. My mechanic's brain took over, no time to think, only act. I backed the truck toward the pumps, then tore open the maintenance panels on all four. The safety seals snapped easily. Gasoline began pouring out in wide, gleaming rivers, flowing together in a shimmering pool that smelled like vengeance. The clay token throbbed hotter in my hand, almost vibrating. It was alive, fighting me, whispering words I didn't understand. Behind me, faint howls began to rise, the skinwalkers, furious, closing in. I ripped open the glove compartment, searching for something to start a fire. A book of matches, the same one Hank had used for his cigarettes, lay inside. My hands trembled as I struck the first match. The tiny flame sputtered in the desert wind, then steadied, a fragile beacon in the dark. I dropped it into the spreading gasoline. The explosion wasn't cinematic. It was real. A deep, concussive boom that tore through the silence, flattening the air. Fire raced outward like a living thing, devouring everything in its path. The heat hit me like a wall, searing my face and arms as I stumbled backward. The pumps ignited one after another, the flames turning from orange to blinding white. The chant from track 3 seemed to echo faintly beneath the roar, the same rhythm, but twisted, not a plea for protection anymore, but a funeral song. Shapes moved in the inferno, tall skeletal forms writhing inside the flames, their yellow eyes melting away. The skinwalkers screamed, voices layered with human pain and animal fury dissolving into ash that rose and vanished into the stars. The token burned in my palm. I hurled it into the heart of the fire. A final deafening crack split the air. The flames turned blue, reaching skyward like a pillar of light. Then came silence, no wind, no howling. Nothing but the crackle of dying fire. I stumbled toward the truck, half-blind lungs burning. Behind me, Coyote Fuel and Go collapsed in on itself, swallowed by its own fire. By dawn, there was nothing left but a smoking pit in the sand. As I drove away down Highway 160, the horizon blazed with morning light. I didn't look back. But even through the roar of the engine, I thought I heard a voice whisper from the wind, soft, distant, almost grateful. The desert remembers. By the time I reached the outskirts of Coyote, the sun had already climbed above the red mesas, turning the desert gold. My hands still trembled on the steering wheel. Every blink brought flashes of the fire, the bone-white flames, the screaming silhouettes, the station collapsing in on itself like it had been waiting to die. I kept driving. The further I got from that stretch of Highway 160, the lighter the air seemed to feel, but the weight in my chest she refused to lift. I told myself it was over, that the desert had taken back what it was owed. But even then, as I crossed into town, a strange silence hung over the world. No cars, no voices, just the wind scraping against the buildings like dry fingers. I parked in front of a motel, got a room under a fake name, and locked the door. The shower ran red for a few seconds before the water cleared. Smoke and blood washed down the drain together. When I finally collapsed onto the bed, I thought I'd sleep for days. But dreams came instead, the kind that felt too real to be dreams at all. I saw Hank, standing in the desert, the fire behind him burning blue. His skin was cracked, blackened, but his eyes glowed faintly yellow. He wasn't angry, just watching, waiting. Then his voice faint like the wind through gravel. "You think you ended it, Miggs? The desert doesn't forget. It just waits." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, the sheets twisted around me. The room smelled faintly of smoke. My phone lay on the nightstand screen, cracked but somehow glowing with a notification. One new voicemail. The number was blocked. My thumb hovered over the play button. Every instinct screamed not to press it. I pressed it anyway. Static. Then a voice I knew instantly. "Hey, little brother. Danny." I froze. It wasn't possible. He was safe, hundreds of miles away. I'd talked to him the night before. But the voice continued calm and familiar. "You shouldn't have burned it, Miggs. You freed them. You freed all of us." Something in the background, a sound like wind, but deeper, hungrier. Then his tone shifted, stretching into something wrong. "We remember you." The message ended. The phone went black. I sat there for a long time, listening to the hum of the air conditioner, the faint buzz of the neon sign outside. The desert stretched endlessly beyond the motel parking lot, gold under the morning sun, peaceful and vast. But I knew better now. Beneath that sand, beneath those mesas, things still moved. Things that waited. I packed my bag and drove west toward California. I didn't look back, not once. But somewhere around the border I caught a glimpse of movement in the rearview mirror. A shimmer in the heat haze. Something tall and thin standing at the edge of the road watching me go. When I blinked, it was gone. Danny called me that evening, his voice tired but real this time. He said he'd had another dream, a woman in white, standing in a desert fire, whispering in Navajo, her words lost to the wind. I told him it was just a nightmare, though we both knew I didn't believe that. That night, as I pulled into another nameless motel, I saw the faintest flicker of red on the horizon, a glow like distant fire just where the desert met the sky. Maybe it was lightning. Maybe it wasn't. I shut off the engine and sat in silence, the night pressing close around me. The desert was quiet again. Too quiet. And in that silence I could almost hear it, the faintest whisper carried on the wind, old as the bones beneath the sand. The desert remembers. If you ever find yourself driving down an empty desert highway at night, and you see an old gas station glowing under a broken neon sign, maybe keep driving. Some places aren't meant to be remembered. Some stories don't end, they just wait. Would you dare take the night shift at Coyote Fuel and Go share this story if you believe that the desert keeps its secrets? And subscribe if you think some ghosts should never be left alone.